All right, so we're on site with Tyler Rogahn here to do a house wash. This is a job Tyler got from one of his connections through roofing contractors. But anyway, I'll give Tyler an opportunity here to do a brief introduction of himself and what he's doing for PowerWash University. And then we'll talk about the walkthrough, what we're gonna do. This particular job has some very unique obstacles, I guess I would say.
I would say so.
And possible issues. So you are in for a treat, because this isn't your typical house wash. You're gonna have a much easier job, but it's good that you get to see this and get the introduction to it so you know what to do when you get on a job site like this. Tyler, tell us a little bit about yourself real quick.
All right, thank you, Mike. Yep, so I am Tyler with T-Tech Power Solutions. I work with PowerWash University, and I will be your house wash and roof wash instructor. I'd like to share my knowledge of about 11 years in the industry with you guys. This house was referred to me by another company that I work with that does quite a bit of roofing. They noticed, as you can see in the back, we've got quite a bit of algae growth going on with this stucco home. They had me in mind and mentioned me to the homeowner, so it's good to have those connections. And we do have quite a bit to work around today with a lot of vegetation and landscaping that's very delicate to work with. So I think it'll be a good experience, and hopefully you can pick something up from that. And thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Always good to have someone on staff that has a lot of knowledge and experience in the industry.
There it is. We're gonna take a walk through here in just a moment and look for any potential problems. You know, some of the things we look out for are going to be plants, electrical outlets, TVs, anything that we just need to be very careful about, making sure we don't splash any water or chemicals onto. So we will we'll tarp off any plants or necessary electronics that might be in the way. Checking all the windows, checking all the doors, look for anything that water might creep in. If we realize we're at a home where they potentially have bad seals on the windows or the doors,
oh man,
hopefully the customer's home and we can have them walk around in the home and double check that as we're moving around the house.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
So a lot of the times, you know, at the base of the door, if they don't ramp up, there's a potential that if it's flat with the ground, you may have water running in as you're rinsing out. So if necessary, we'll dam up these doors and make sure nothing's flowing back inside there.
Good.
But other than that, I think we should walk around, do an inspection of the property, and keep an eye out for any potential problems that might arise.
All right, I'm excited to see it. Let's go. So we're headed around to the side of the house. This house has a very small front street view, but it's very long.
Okay, so a couple things I'm noticing immediately when we get back here. We're gonna have furniture and plants are gonna need either get out of the way or tarp off.
Yep.
Relatively lightweight furniture. I don't see any reason why we can't move that. Another thing that draws my attention, we've got this wood decking up here.
Yep.
Appears to be fairly aged, probably dry. The sealer's gone on it.
And
I'm noticing the wand marks.
Yeah.
Somebody's come back here and touched up. You know, a lot of times homeowners will do their best to maintain the property, but without the proper education, they end up with wand marks on the wood. I'm seeing it pretty much everywhere out here.
Right.
So
it almost looks like they had a stain or something on it and they tried to get it off. And
yeah, I'm sure it was great at one time. The spot that's a little bit wet, we can tell that, you know,
this looks like a hardwood too.
It would be great for restoration.
Yeah.
You know, for the wood class, that might be something great. But
it might even be like a redwood, because I see how the colors come out.
I mean, it's beautiful when it's
wet. This would be like an excellent restoration job back here.
Well, being that
wanting to do wood,
you're right, and we might just get them on for that class.
Yeah.
The condition of the wood, being that it's so dry and the sealer's gone, we don't want it to absorb any of the chemicals or the house wash that we're putting down. So I'm going to thoroughly soak this wood before we come back here and start doing the house wash.
There you go.
It's going to soak it up. It's still probably going to change color to some extent, you know, very lightly. We're going to try to keep that to a minimum, but if we're going to do it that way, I do want to soak the whole thing so that it's not inconsistent. We've got the runoff from the house that's going to come down in a majority of it, and that's not what we want when we're done, to have half of this looking brighter than the rest.
Right.
And so we'll have a relatively light mix. It's already soaked up quite a bit of the water from the pre-soaking, and we should be able to balance it out. I'm most likely, these wand marks that someone else left behind, they'll probably go away. I wouldn't promise that to the homeowner, but that could be a little icing on the cake at the end of the day if we're able to repair some of the damages that were done.
Yeah.
And so,
I'm a little bit familiar with wood restoration stuff. We have a wood restoration course in PowerWash University too, with Everett Abrams. And some of the stuff, it just kind of my eye from a little bit of experience I've seen with him, is it looks like this may have had a stain on it at some point. And some of that is breaking down because you can see the wand marks there. But it doesn't mean that's what it is. But just looking at that, that's wet, this would look beautiful if it was cleaned up. Just there's a deep red color here, and
I would
it's
agree.
typical of a hardwood. And one of the mistakes that people make when they deal with hardwoods is they think hardwoods are tough, but hardwoods damage easier than any other wood.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
So you have to actually be more careful with hardwoods than you do regular woods, because they show the damage so much more.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, just a side note from the house wash.
Okay. Another thing I'm keeping out for might be pre-existing conditions or damages. You know, the stucco's beautiful, it cleans up nicely, but it can also be very delicate. And so a soft wash is an absolute must with this type of situation. And a lot of times it's prone to cracking. You know, a normal home with siding or brick, it can shift to some extent and it won't be quite as noticeable, but on a home like this,
so come around here,
if anything shifts, we're starting to notice a few cracks in certain areas. Up near the gutter, we can see that some of that's actually flaking off. And so, you know, we'll take note of that and take a couple pictures of that in case we need to show those to the customer for future reference. But those will also be areas that we need to be especially careful with if it's flaking off. And one other thing, Mike, I'm noticing this house has metal gutters. It has a metal roof. Those are things we need to be especially careful about. They're not all created equal. Some of them will have a reaction if you let your house wash mix get on there. Sometimes it doesn't even need to totally dry to start a reaction.
Oh boy, okay.
And so what I was able to do, the company that put these roofs and gutters on, I was able to go get a sample from them and do a few tests before I came back out and before I submitted the estimate to make sure that this is going to be able to withstand our process. This particular one is a zinc coated roof. It's going to be one of the higher end materials that you can use. And fortunately for us, it had no reaction with the chemicals. I was able to apply and rinse away, apply and totally let it dry and see if a worst case scenario, say if I spray and I don't notice and I don't rinse it until I'm done with the house wash, it's still going to wipe off easily or rinse off. And so,
that's important.
But that's very important to see the materials you're working with. You know, it's much like the wood. If I were to get the chemical directly on here without being prepared for that, it could cause another problem that we'd have to fix later down the line.
Right.
And so, but that is one thing that it's definitely important to keep in mind. We do have a few of these metal fixtures around the home. We're going to do our best to rinse those off as well as possible. I do, you know, if need be, we can treat these with another product to restore the metal a little bit, but we're going to do our best not to have to take that step with our precautionary measures of pre-rinsing and post-rinsing. Yeah. And so, you know, we've got more furniture back here, a rug, some screen doors. I want to make sure those are all secured and locked up properly. This one's connected to the home, and so it's got a quick connect fitting. I don't think it should be any problem for us to get this and roll it out of the way as well, so that we can clean around it effectively. Getting back here in the back of the house, noticing the algae growth on the home is becoming quite a bit more prominent. We've got a couple different types going on. We've got this darker brownish type, and then the light green, which typically will react and clean up relatively easy. And so that's what I like to look for. The main thing is getting this all cleaned and making sure it's all consistent when we're done. And so, you know, looking at this back area,
this is starting
to present a couple challenges for us.
Yeah.
We've got this bamboo growth back here, which is a fairly resilient plant, but we don't want to just be careless with them. And so, you know, a tricky part of this is going to be the fact that we've got them pretty close to the house. Most certainly, some of our product is going to splash on these as we're working. And so I'm going to prepare myself by having at least one or two people back here just spraying clean water on these as we're applying the mix, and hopefully saturate them enough so that we won't see any burning of the leaves.
Right.
I don't assume that we would put so much product on the house that we would need to worry about it soaking into the ground. We'll get our mix dialed in properly, hopefully get it in one application, a soak and a rinse, and we should be good back here.
There you go, yeah.
And so, but you know, some of these we're gonna have to pull them back from the house, have some helpers hold this back so that we can apply and let it run down without it being in direct contact as much as possible.
Okay,
And so, yeah, looks good.
good. Kind of, there's a bunch of stucco and repair right here.
Okay.
See
What
in
are you
that corner?
noticing, Mike?
Right here on this corner,
Uh-huh.
you're seeing all this,
Oh, I see.
the crack, and there's been some repair on it already.
Okay.
So some of that may, like I did a parking garage years ago, and they had a bunch of stucco on it. When we cleaned it, I started hitting the sides, and just huge pieces just started popping off the stucco. It just like, it freaked me out. That's a whole nother story, but I actually got accused of damaging it, and after I called all the stucco people in the area, they said, no, it's been like that for years. So
Okay.
and they backed off, but you know, having good documentation ahead of time, this is where you'd want to be taking pictures right here.
Sure, good eye.
So,
yeah, definitely.
yeah.
So we'll definitely document that. And so, and you know, that's the good thing about doing the soft wash is that hopefully we're not going to chip any of that away.
Yeah.
Odds are a little piece here or there will flake off, but that's the beauty of the soft wash.
Yeah, and to add to that, we're soft washing this. When I power washed that surface,
Oh, is that so?
and that was like 25 years ago. So soft washing really wasn't a practice back
Uh-huh.
then. And soft wash has gotten so popular over the last 5 to 10 years, and that's the reason for it, is to be able to clean surfaces like this
Sure.
and roofs and minimize any kind of damage that you may be doing to
Okay.
it, because you're not blasting the surface anymore. Yeah.
So, Mike, I'm noticing this awning here has got a lot of growth above it, and most likely that's happening because the wind comes through in the morning, that morning dew that's on the wall is drying up, but this is disrupting the airflow across that part of the wall, and so
Right.
it's going to stay moist for a longer period of time than the rest of the wall, and so that's the reason that we're getting so much growth right above that. And so we're still going to use the same concentration of house wash mix that we're doing on everything else, but there's a slight possibility we may have to treat that twice to get the desired result.
Sure.
But either way, we should get it all to balance out.
Okay. Before you go any further, Tyler, I just want to point out, this really is a bit of an unusual house. I mean, like, we've got gardens everywhere as you go around this house. So we've got to be super concerned about this. This
Sure.
needs a lot of attention.
And concerned I am, Mike.
Yeah.
It's going to take every bit of prep work, and your thought process needs to be dialed in on this one, because
Yeah.
as you can tell, this isn't just decoration for them. I mean, this is a big part of their
Yeah.
home and what makes them comfortable. So keeping an eye on the plants, keeping everything rinsed down. We need it to look better when we leave.
Yeah.
You know, not just the house. We need the plants to all still be intact and unburned.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think you just hit on something really important there, because to us as a contractor, we see these plants as just something that comes from a nursery and we have a value on it. But we don't understand is that sometimes these plants have a lot of sentimental value to them. And it may have been something they got from a grandchild or from a daughter, or they planted it when someone was born. I mean, plants can take on a whole nother meaning of sentimental value. And if you're cleaning those and you kill it and you have to replace it, that's what you're affecting with the homeowner. This is their personal property, and they have personal feelings and emotions tied to this. And it's easy to be separated from that as a contractor. So if you start thinking like that and start realizing how important things around a house can be, and not just plants, but anything that's ornamental or
Sure.
anything that they've added, you got to keep that. That's super important when you're dealing on at a residential level.
I would agree. And we will do just that. Like I say, I think that this home more than likely is probably maintained by a landscaping company, but
Yeah.
that's money and time that they've put into getting this to what it is today. And
Yeah.
so, you know, that's what will set you apart from a lot of the other contractors is how much are you willing to provide for the customer to make sure that you're not going to cause any of those damages.
Right.
You know, that's your cost per hour is going to be a little bit more because this isn't just a normal building out in the middle of a dirt field. We've got a lot to work with here, and a lot of thought needs to go into it, and
Yeah.
it needs to be done very professionally,
Right.
or you won't get another job like this.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but I think what I'll do, I am noticing a few things around here that I'll probably document, just take a few pictures of while I've got my phone handy. Around on this side, we've got some odd discoloration going on. Not exactly sure what that's coming from. Once we start the process, hopefully the house wash will remove some of these strange stains that are coming down. It looks, I can't say for certain what that is. I'm hoping it's not any sort of rust. There wouldn't have been anything up there that was rusting, but that drip down pattern could be a cause for concern. And if the house wash doesn't get it, we may take another approach.
Right.
I mean, possibilities from Rust Remover Plus might be able to remedy that,
Yeah.
but we need to clean it first to determine exactly what that is. But a lot of times in areas like this, where we've got a lot of heavy growth, that could definitely be a potential area that once we start washing, we're going to reveal some pre-existing damages under there. Once that mold and algae gets even the slightest bit under the surface, it's going to be loosening it from the underlying surface. And so, you know, I would probably document that as well. Overall, you know, I can't see anything flaking off there, but it does look like we've got possibly even a little bit of mineral buildup on there. Okay, Mike, coming around here, I see another objective that we're going to be working with. On one side, we've got a Japanese maple.
Yep.
We've got another equally as delicate tree over here.
Uh-huh.
And this is something that we're going to definitely need to take note of and take precautions with.
Yeah. Like the Japanese maple, I think is probably one of the most sensitive plants we have to deal with.
That it is.
It is. I mean, I see you guys post all the time about Japanese maples and how easy they are to be damaged
Right.
from our process because of the bleach.
Sure.
They're a delicate plant. And
Yeah,
you
they
notice
are.
it's in a shaded area because they don't
Right.
like a lot of sun either. So they do well here, but they're very particular.
I mean, we can see some, who knows what this was. We've got a little bit of burning
Yeah.
on the end of some of these leaves.
Yeah.
And nobody's been back here with anything like we're about to spray on the house.
Right.
And so, you know, working around that and taking every necessary precaution to baby these things is going to
Yeah.
be essential.
And I don't know what's going on, but there's actually a lot of plants on the property that have this burning on the leaves. I've
And
noticed
so,
that as we walked it. Yeah.
But that's even more reason. You know, some of
Be
these
careful.
plants may already be struggling in one way or the other, and that could be the tipping point. We come in here and get a little bit of house wash on there. We haven't taken, you know, precautionary pre-rinsing and post-rinsing, then that could be the matter of whether that plant makes it or not.
Yeah.
And, you know, yes, they're in a condition at this point, but if we go through our process and then we finish the plant off and it's in bad shape or it dies, then, you know, regardless,
Yeah.
some of this is already bad.
Got a
In the
plant,
homeowner's
yeah.
eyes, we're the ones who have killed it. So
Right.
It's going to be very important that we do a very thorough pre-soak and post-soaking after we're done with this. But we'll take the measures and we'll do our best. And if you know you're doing your best 100% of the time, then that's what you're left with. At least you didn't cut a corner and say, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. That was a mistake that I made. If you're doing everything that you know is right, then you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Some things are unavoidable. There is a potential that a couple of these plants may have a little bit of exposure that they don't like. But if I've done everything that I can to do a professional job, I'd be comfortable with it.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
And we noticed this one's already got damage on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this is
it's-
something you definitely want to document,
Sure.
take pictures of.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
struggling, and like you know, I was mentioning, it might be the point if we weren't careful back here.
Yeah.
This, you know, half of the plant, it's struggling enough to keep up with this dead part of the growth. We've absolutely got to do our best to keep these clear and free of our cleaning process.
Yeah.
Okay.
This side of the house looks relatively easy.
Yeah, I would say so.
This is probably
There's not much.
yeah.
Not much going on back here. We've just got a tiny bit here. We'll still obviously clean the whole thing. In the past, I've walked around homes and thought, well, this side probably doesn't need it. You know, it doesn't look that bad. But once you get one clean side, you're going to notice that spot that you initially thought was clean should have been washed. It's not
Oh,
clean.
right.
It looks
Yeah.
good compared to some of the worst areas on the home, but it definitely all has to be washed because it won't
Yeah.
blend in
Oh,
correctly.
right, exactly.
And so, and that can be a mistake when you're bidding a job, is you think, oh, well, I'll set the price at this amount because I'm only going to wash half of it. If you can, always try to push for the whole house wash, because You know, you've provided them with that low cost because you're only going to do part of the work, but then you realize you've kind of done them a disservice because the house isn't equally clean all the way around, and they'll always be thinking of that when they walk by that side of the house, that they wish that part would have been done. So I just try to get the whole thing in. That way I know 100% of the job was done properly. One more of these little, what would we call this little area? What do they call these little?
Well, I would call it an atrium, but that's kind of like in the middle of a building. But I would just say it's a seating area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got this additional patio seating area, and it has got a lot of growth going on in here.
Yeah.
Now, it does also have a lot more of these trees that we're going to have to be careful about. They're growing up right on the house.
Yeah, and they're right against the house too.
Exactly. Yeah, and so that's going to be a little bit of extra work for us to work around those. It can be done, but it's going to take everybody being in sync and having their heads in the game to be looking out for any potential splashes or overspray. Fortunately, in this area, there's not a lot of wind, and so we're not going to have to worry about it blowing on there, but when we're applying our chemical, we need to be precise. You know, we've got a lot of this grass that's down here. It's pretty resilient, but I have seen it burned, and so every bit of the plants back here will need to be soaked down or moved out of the way.
Yep.
Then, you know, we've got two more over here that are totally touching the house. That is not an ideal situation for us to work with, but I'm thinking probably go ahead and pull some tarp up behind there on the wall and then overlap it.
Yeah.
And that will cover a good majority of them. You know, we'll still do a thorough rinsing process, but really for that situation, it's a tough spot. I mean, that is quite a challenge.
And there we have a Japanese maple right against
up,
the house.
touching the house. Yes. So, in addition to tarping, we might actually have to physically pull those away from the home a little bit so we can allow it to run down behind there.
Yeah.
And say it's not an ideal situation, but if we don't do it, somebody's going to clean it.
Yeah.
So somebody will definitely clean it, and it needs to be us. And we're going to use the right process to get it done. You know, I was noticing this area of trim around the top with the stucco. It's going to be directly running down on this metal. Yes, I've done the test, and I know that it's okay, but I still want to use the practice to where we're being careful about allowing that chemical to get on the metal. So this continues on to the front of the home, right near the front entryway. And so I think probably what would be a good idea, while we're spraying that front side of the house, I'll have somebody back here continually spraying up in this gully to keep that metal rinsed and the water flowing back there. And that way, you know, although it can take it, there's a lot of roofs that don't. It's a good idea to always practice the right way to do it every time, whether you need it or not. And so we'll have to have somebody back here rinsing, and we'll have someone else in the front rinsing as we're going, because some of that is going to splash over. If I'm in the front of the house, I won't notice if some of this splashes down here on the plants. And if I walk around here, I wouldn't be able to tell where that splashed on. So having aces in your places whenever we're doing this is going to be key to prevent any overspray or splash off on these plants. And we've got some
beautiful flowers.
Yeah, they're unique. And there are very few flowers that I've run into that the petals can tolerate a house wash mix. And so those, I rarely see anything like that. That's something we're definitely going to want to try and baby those a little bit. Some of these softer leaf plants will definitely appreciate us taking precautionary measures.
Yep.
Okay. Good deal. Okay, one more feature of this home is they've got an aluminum front door. And, you know, we always take the precautionary measures of being sure to take extra special care of door fixtures, doors themselves, if they're made constructed of metals like this. We don't want any chemical reaction. And so, being that this is made of what it is, we're going to go ahead, swing both of these doors open, totally tarp them off, and then close them from the inside so that our cleaning solution is not going to be exposed to the door. But that is something we need to be careful about. We've got a couple other metal fixtures here that we could either make very sure that we're rinsing off throughout the process, or you can actually mask them off with tape if that's a way you want to do it. But something to keep in mind, metal doors and fixtures can become an issue if you're not ready for it.